That's pretty cool that you guys are doing this.
So far, we've already raised $345, and so far we have like $40.
Well, congratulations. That's a very entrepreneur of you guys. Good for you. We should name a seat after you guys for being out here doing this. Well, good luck, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're trying to raise money to help get a new arena so the Kings will stay longer and they won't have to move to Anaheim.
It got started with Jack and Gil trying to raise some money, trying to do something to help the Kings. There's been a lot of talk about them leaving. They said, let's go do a lemonade stand, and they said, we're just going to raise some money, see what we can do, and see if we can donate to the effort to keep the Kings here.
If you ask these people would they stay here, they would stay. I guarantee they would stay in.
Sleep here tonight.
Yeah. Because they know this is historic. This is, possibility of losing an NBA franchise in a town that really deserves it. I think at the end of the day, it's really a sad day.
What do you say, Paul? We're gonna have a game report.
There were hundreds of people that had gathered behind where Jerry and I were on center court, and they start chanting our name. Grant and Jerry, Grant and Jerry. And I'm like, I just said, I'm not gonna get through this.
I think I would have been okay, then Grant kind of lost it, which, the first time I ever saw Grant lose it at all. He's an emotional guy, but not that way.
We'll try to make it off the air. Well, I'll tell you. Let me catch my breath here. There's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know. But the one thing that we do know is the love affair between this team and this city.
I hadn't cried as hard as I did that night when I watched the Grant and Jerry sign-off since I was in single digits. It just all came out. It was an emotional, it was a waterfall, literally and figuratively. And at that point, Kings lost an overtime, season over. My daughter's in her little Kings jersey. She'll never go to a game. Grant crying on the air. My hero, one of them, my mentor, he's crying. So is Jerry. Mighty Casey struck out. It was over. It was done. I had no hope at that point.
I sat up in the rafters at that game and I wasn't writing. I was just gonna watch to see what happened. And I sat up there with Phil Cerna, Joe's son. And neither one of us really wanted to contemplate what it meant for an already battered region, what it would mean for the team to leave. Nothing good on any level. And so at that point, the tone of my columns had already cranked up to really acknowledge that this issue was a lot bigger than basketball. It was a lot bigger than the Maloofs, a lot bigger than it was about another business going under and leaving Sacramento. We had already experienced way too many of those.
We had been telling people this was a reality if we didn't get it done, and I think people didn't necessarily believe us, that maybe the sky was falling and this was such a good market, why would they ever leave? And for those of us who have been working on it, kind of for a long time, we always were driven by the thought that they could leave, and probably would if we didn't get this done.
For 26 years, the Kings franchise and the people of Sacramento formed a unique bond rarely seen in professional sports. The fans, the team, and the community were in danger of being left with only memories that all began with Greg Lukenbill's dream of bringing a first-class venue to the capital of California.
When I was a kid growing up, we had to go to San Francisco. We had to go to the Cow Palace. We had to go to Seal Stadium, or we go to the Oakland Coliseum. We go to Candlestick Park. but there was nothing like that in Sacramento, and so we felt like second class, like we were in a situation where if you really wanted to see something national scale, you had to go to San Francisco or Oakland to see it. When there was I didn't understand the logic of why we couldn't have something like that in Sacramento. I'd never seen an NBA game in my life in person, and so the first time I ever saw it was after I bought the team when I was in Kansas City. That's the first time I ever saw the NBA play. The league said, you know, we're not ready for expansion. We got problems in the league right now, so we'd like you to take a shot at trying to put together an adequate facility to move the team, and then if you can do that, we'll allow you to move the team to Sacramento. They're very concerned about having a permanent arena.
That's the number one thing.
That's very important.
And did they set up guidelines for that?
That not yet, but it will be pretty much decided at the Board of Governors meeting, I believe.
We had to get a building built here, and we couldn't get zoning where the current Arco Arena is because it was in the city, and the city was not in favor of the whole thing. So the owners bought this piece of property right here, which actually borders, it's in the county, but not the city, and it borders the city on two sides. It's kind of a, you know, thumb in your nose piece of property. So they bought 40 acres here to do this.
With respect to the political issues of zoning land or not zoning land, that's not something that the NBA wants to get into. They're just concerned with, in the year 3, let's have a good facility that certainly has a bigger capacity and meets our standards.
I'm sure that the team is going to come. The owners of the team have made a very sincere, dedicated effort to bring them here. And as long as they have a place to play, which now happens to be the temporary arena, I'm sure they'll be able to bring them here.
You think they'll come for sure?
I'm almost 99% sure. That's up to the NBA.
We expect April 16th in New York at the Helmsley Palace Hotel for the entire Board of Governors to vote officially in favor of moving the Kansas City Kings to Sacramento and officially becoming the Sacramento Kings.
The board voted to approve the move of the Kansas City Kings to Sacramento for the 1985-86 season.
Long time since I've seen this many people at the airport for any Kings basketball team at all.
You know, we're like little kids right now. All of us was pretty happy that we were coming here to practice here, get to see the city and get to meet the people. And
it's 85 degrees in it.
Oh yeah, that's the good thing about it, no snow.
Take a moment to congratulate and thank the people of Sacramento. Their enthusiasm, faith, and support of our efforts played a significant role today in bringing Sacramento its first Major League franchise.
The sense of excitement is something that none of us will ever forget that we're involved in it. People were so starved for a professional sports franchise in this city that they could call their own. And I remember the first time the Kings came out to Northern California, they were obviously going to play the Warriors, and they had a light practice session at American River College. And before they walked on the floor, you could not, they were packed to the rafters in that relatively small gym that probably seats 2,000 or maybe a little bit over. And the Kings walked out on the floor, standing ovation. Everything the Kings did, stretching, getting ready for a practice session, it was just like bedlam.
As we say, the people are cheering exit signs. Yes, frankly it is. 3 months ago, no, but I've come to not be surprised with anything that happens in Sacramento. It's all positive.
We haven't seen this in Kansas City, nor have I seen this as an NBA player. I don't think that there has been anything like this in a very long time.
There was more enthusiasm at that first practice session than they were used to in, you know, an entire season in Kansas City.
We had an absolute rush to take applications for tickets. It was unbelievable, and we took $100 deposits so that there was some legitimacy for every ticket. And it came together quickly. We actually had applications for over 25,000 season tickets in the building, which was a little more than we anticipated. We could have sold the whole building out with 100% season tickets, and the only reason we didn't was because we would have locked up and, you know, and killed off so many other people potentially to get in the building.
It was the sporting event of the year, if not the entire history of Sacramento. Certainly worthy of a celebration, and a celebration it was for long-suffering sports fans here.
We've been basketball coaches forever. We've been waiting for a basketball room all these years. Now we got it.
The media was there.
Very, very unusual event in Sacramento for a number of reasons. First of all, the sports and the Kings and all that. But for
And so was a sellout crowd of over 10,000 fans, dressed for a special occasion.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this for a long time, and we thought there's only one way to bring the Kings into Sacramento and do it in class.
There were some limousines, there were people in tuxedos, and it was the fact that people were wearing tuxedos to a sporting event. I mean, that was a statement all unto its own.
A lot of folks really were that proud of this moment, our first professional franchise game in the city of Sacramento, that it became a black tie affair for them.
That night was beyond any expectation anybody had.
The crowd got even more boisterous as the Kings players were introduced, and surprise cheerleader Crazy George went to work. But that was nothing compared to the explosion of noise following the Kings' first basket.
We knew that something special had been created, and this was the genesis. And everybody was anxious to jump on this magic carpet and see where this ride was going to take us.
It just raised the level of entertainment to a national level because we had the facility.
All of a sudden, with the advent of the Sacramento Kings, every 11 o'clock news cast across the country during basketball season was seeing Sacramento on their TV sets.
I think the ultimate moment that year was when they beat the Celtics, interestingly enough, because the Celtics were very good that year, and Bird actually missed 2 free throws at crunch time. Larry Bird in that little arena, because I don't think he was standing inside a jet engine, I think, and the noise volume was just, it was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever heard inside an arena louder than that moment when he was trying to sink those 2 free throws. It was pretty amazing to be there for that, and it really did shake him.
It was a transitional time, but it's a time that brought an air of excitement to this city. And I've lived in Sacramento now for, getting close to 50 years. I've never seen anything quite like that.
There was a lot of heart and soul there going back and forth between the fans and the players. And honestly, the players had a lot to do with it. Their britches weren't quite as big in 1985 as they are in 2011, so to speak.
Greg Lukenbill brought the team to Sacramento in the last days of the old NBA, before it really became, boom, the NBA that we know now. In that he was really able to build the first arena and frankly, he didn't tell anybody at first what he was doing. And so when people started seeing the beams go up in the air, like, holy smokes, what's going on here? And so it was the old NBA where he brings it here, doesn't bother the taxpayers, and then they're in the building, and no sooner are they in the building that the league explodes.
One night when we had a big storm, and there was a rain in this building, and it starts dripping, playing the Philadelphia 76ers, and the water is hitting right at the foul line, almost directly in front of our broadcast position. What are we going to do? And as a broadcaster, you're wondering, how long is this going to go on? How much time are we going to have to fill here? And working basically solo, there's nobody to turn to, and you're creating, you're describing, you're doing what I think a good radio broadcaster does in that situation. And all of a sudden, somebody's attention points up. We're looking up in the rafters. My God, that's Greg Lukenbill. Look at up there. He's up there in his flannel shirt, I believe, and he's crawling out off the catwalk onto the girders. He's jury-rigging a banner, tying it down to collect the water. I say, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this. And what in the world happens if he slips and falls?
If you stop the game, it's like $1 million fine. You know, we didn't have $1 million. And so Greg, the powers to be got together, and Greg Lukenbill said, I can't ask anybody else to get up there. I can't ask somebody to do that if I'm not willing to do that.
was really difficult for me to look at those guys and say, so which of you would like to walk out on this beam? It was just easier to do it, you know, and I also knew that I was comfortable with my ability to handle it, so I figured that was the smartest and the safest way to get the job accomplished, and that's all I was trying to do, just like another day at the office.
Finally, there was one thing everybody could agree on. We loved our Kings. You know, and it broke down a lot of barriers and a lot of development happened, a lot of positive, things, a lot of jobs coming in. We could now attract companies that we had no shot at before because now we had major league entertainment. No, not just the sports, but all the other events, the circus, the ice shows, the concerts. It was just a whole different deal.
You know, we were told in the beginning, by the experts, this won't last, the first year was a sellout, the second year was a sellout, the third year is a sellout. That's about all you're going to get. Well, year after year after year, it kept doing it and it went beyond the cycle. So something special is going on.
They weren't very good, clearly, and yet the place was packed and people were going crazy for the team, and there was a huge passion for the team, and I was really amazed at how much space that the B gave the NBA, and it just became really clear really fast what a huge deal it was to have a team here, that this was the only major sports, and that Sacramento was a big sports town, a secondary sports town that finally had its own thing. And people responded in kind, that it wasn't just going to the games, but it meant a lot more than that.
Although there was great fan support, the team had very little success in the early years in Sacramento.
You remember aspects of the success, but you also remember aspects of those really lean years, and there were a lot of them. Years when they didn't win 30 games, and man, that's painful. And as a broadcaster, it's maybe the biggest challenge there is. How do you make this entertaining? How do you put a good positive spin night after night when your team is really struggling? And again, you tip your cap to the fans and say, without the energy that they provided, without their perseverance, it could have been just absolutely dreadful. It wasn't. It was painful, but it wasn't dreadful.
In following his vision for bringing first-class entertainment to the Sacramento region, Greg Lukenbill attempted to build an outdoor stadium next to Arco Arena.
He had a vision. He was so close. The economy crashed in the early 90s that he ran out of money. And so there's the graveyard of the baseball stadium that he was going to build, and it's still there. It's been collecting weeds ever since then. But he had this big vision of having a Major League Baseball stadium or NFL stadium right next to Arco Arena, and that was going to be the hub of the entire region. Bottom fell out. He lost his money. And I think that he really got beaten down by the political process. Sacramento, for its reputation of being a kind of a sleepy, placid place, politically is bare knuckles. And there are really intense special interests here in town. And I think they just wore him down. I think he'd had enough, because not only did he sell the team, but he basically went into seclusion to where he's run away from most every interview since then. And it's a shame, because people should remember what he did. He should be a huge person in this town.
Greg Lukenbill, to his everlasting credit, accomplished something in what I've called over the years the think small mentality of Sacramento that just drives me absolutely crazy. He came in and he got things done. He got a temporary building built in the shortest period of time, 3 years play there, and then into a new building, opened in 1988. And he fought the red tape, he fought the battles, he did, with all the political organizations and one thing or another, found the funding, made it happen.
In April of 1992, Los Angeles developers, led by real estate mogul Jim Thomas, purchased majority interest in the Kings.
Jim Thomas comes in, Southern California, whole kind of different concept, because he's been out in the big world and a very successful businessman. And so I think it brought a different dimension to this organization that maybe we hadn't seen before.
Sacramento had this fear that it maybe wasn't worthy of a major league sports team. And so when an out-of-towner buys the team, there's the immediate fear that this guy will want to take the team out of town. And there was a fight, even when he bought the team, from some people saying, you've got to tell us, Jim Thomas, you're going to keep the team in town. There was the fear. But at the same time, there was a sense of, maybe a small sense of relief, because now here was a fellow who was very good at business. He was a Southern California developer. And he bought the team. You thought maybe this means a little more stability to the team. What we learned a few years later is that when he bought the team, he bought into a lot of debt, and this was debt at high interest rates. And so almost immediately, Jim Thomas would say later, he had trouble breaking even here in Sacramento with the Kings.
Struggling to keep the franchise financially viable, Jim Thomas went to the city council and Mayor Joe Cerna in hopes of getting a new loan at a lower interest rate.
Greg Lukenbill and his group brought a team here and didn't bother the taxpayers at all. I mean, at all. So we get this great thing, this great civic resource, a great civic pride for free, F-R-E-E, free. And we have that for several years while the whole business model of the league is changing. And so then you have Jim Thomas. And so Jim Thomas, when he went to the council, it was not received well. Not a particularly articulate guy, certainly not a flashy guy, not a likable guy at all. But he really ran headlong into reality. A reality that was a long time overdue, that we had 12 years of the team for free. And they weren't very good, but we had an NBA team here. They sold really well. They had put down roots. The people had thrown their arms around the team. So all of a sudden, it's going to cost us money to do this. And it became this big controversy.
The controversy stemmed from a proposal for a $70 million loan that needed approval from City Council.
Joe Cerna was not a huge sport fan, but he had a sense of how the Kings fit into this community and how sports did. And the night of the vote of the $70 million loan, when it was his time to speak, he said sports is part of the cultural fabric of the city. It wasn't certain how the vote was going to go. In fact, there was one city councilman who was on the fence, Jimmy Yee, who would later be mayor. And he said he didn't think there was enough collateral. He actually talked Jim Thomas into putting up $20 million of the team as collateral. And he said he wouldn't vote for this. He wouldn't consider voting for this absent that. He then got up and said even his own family was divided. His brother-in-law said, yes, it's good. His sister-in-law said, you're selling the city. He brought drama to the moment. That it was just interesting. There was cheerleaders in the audience. Everybody, it seems like half the city was there. Came time for Jimmy Yee to vote. And instead of voting, he asked Jim Thomas to stand up. Jim Thomas stood up and he said, read my lips. And then he held up a sign saying, go Kings. And he shoved his fist in the air. That was his vote, yes. That was the vote that put it over the top. That was the moment, the first moment that Sacramento almost lost the Kings.
The risk that Sacramento took really is minimal, despite all the people who scream that it's this huge, sort of Damocles over Sacramento's head. BS. It's BS. The city floated the loans. The general fund is not impacted. They've never taken a dime out of the taxpayers' pockets. They just basically put up their credit rating to help, fund this loan money. But because it's Sacramento, because it's California, it's been portrayed by people, and frankly, there's a ton of ignorance out among the populace about this, but it's been portrayed that Sacramento really put itself on the line. It was a good thing for the Sacramento to do, and it showed a commitment, but it wasn't dangerous, and it wasn't nearly as controversial as it should have been, but that's just the way it was portrayed because that's the way Sacramento is. The pieces for the Renaissance and the Kings were in place by the time the Maloofs came on board. What they were able to do was they were able to ride the wave. And from Jim Thomas's purposes, he gets paid, but he went through all that misery, and then the minute that he hands the team over, they become this phenomenon, not just in town, but throughout the whole NBA.
I remember thinking, wouldn't it be great to have the luxury of knowing that every time you went on the floor, be it on your home floor or anywhere else around the league, that you had a legitimate chance of winning that ball game that night. And suddenly, the Kings were in that situation.
You know how in sports people say it can happen, but it can't happen overnight? Well, they're wrong. It basically happened overnight. And it was the 98-99 season, the abbreviated 50-game season. And the season that year didn't start, I believe, until the first week of February. And there was a very short period of free agency. Now, they had already made the trade for Chris Webber. But during the time when the lockout ended and the season started, they signed Vlade Divac. They signed John Barry. Peja came over from Europe. Jason Williams. I mean, it all happened at once.
When they came back off the lockout, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we got a good team in Sacramento. And it's the power of sport. It's the narcotic of sports, in that you forget. Your brain turns off. Really, that's what. And if I think back now, I wasn't thinking about the fact that there's no way that the economics were going to work, or that the building was already, 10 years outdated. We had a team that was on national television that people cared about, and something really powerful was unleashed in Sacramento that those of us who lived through it will never forget. And it's like when you eat your first Krispy Kreme donut or whatever you want, that buzz that you get, you want to experience that again. And that's what sports do to you. It just completely turns off all rational thought. It makes you want to live that again, because those times were, I wouldn't trade those for anything. Having covered it and having been there and having experienced it, it's something that I hope that we can savor at some point again.
When you looked at us on the floor and we were warming up, we didn't look like much, maybe. But then once we took the jerseys off and we started playing, the ball started moving around, it was something special. And it was the way in my vision, the way basketball is supposed to be played. And Sacramento is a town that supports their team. They love their team. So the way that we played the game was with love.
In 2000, the arena process began anew with the election of Mayor Heather Fargo. With new owners in place and the team riding high, questions about the viability of Arco Arena began to come to the forefront.
It's like an old barn. And only 2 years into it, it was already an old barn compared to what the NBA was doing and what they would do. Suddenly guys like Greg weren't the owners of NBA teams anymore, and very soon he wouldn't be the owner anymore either. And it happened just like that. And unfortunately for him, for us, it happened very early in the life cycle of this team and of this arena.
When Heather Fargo was running for office, she proposed what she called a rail yard commission to study redevelopment of the rail yard. And that included studying whether an arena should go in the rail yard. Now, I said that Joe Cerna wasn't a huge sports fan. Heather Fargo is not a sports fan at all. But she had a strong sense of trying to rebuild the urban core, the downtown. And she saw the rail yard as a spot. And she can get credit for being maybe the first elected leader here who said, I think that an arena should go down in the downtown rail yard. In fact, in 2002, she led a little delegation. They looked at downtown arenas in other cities. They went to Indianapolis, went to Cleveland. I went with them. And I actually saw their eyes open as they saw Conseco Fieldhouse and what was then called Gund Arena in Cleveland, and how an arena can fit in the downtown.
Developing downtowns are essentially developing communities. The heart of communities, and people appreciate it, whether they know it or not. They appreciate your work. They want to live in cities where the skylines are recognizable and attractive architecturally. They want to live in regions that feel like there's a heart and there's a growth going on that is long term, and people are reinvesting, and it's not a dying community.
As the politicians discussed new arena ideas and downtown development, the course of the Kings franchise changed in one devastating moment.
I remember sitting on the bench 2 hours before the game talking to Bill Walton, who was doing the game on national TV. And he said, "You guys are going to do it again." And I said, "Really? You really think so?" He goes, "Absolutely. You're the best team in the league." He said, "You are going to win the whole thing this year." And so I was talking to Bill, and that, what was it? An hour later, 2 hours later, Chris Webber goes down in a heap underneath the basket.
I don't think anyone knew at that particular time what was happening and what was going on, but I think it was heartfelt that one of our greatest and biggest warriors just fell. And we fought as hard as we could, but it wasn't meant. When Chris went down, it was the end of the era, and it wasn't that I maybe didn't see it, but I felt it at the time. As soon as I think I was at the other end of the court, and I looked back at him, and I was like, oh man. And, you know, I've had injuries before, and you know when something's not good.
I don't think any of us at the time realized how significant that particular moment might be. But then that's the fragile existence of any athlete, professional, amateur, whatever. And was this team ever the same after that injury? I don't think so.
Sooner or later, you're going to crash. And in the case of the Kings, it was the minute that core players, those players should have won the championship, they got old, they broke down, and it happened just like that.
The team's run at a championship was over, but the fight to get a new facility built continued. A major plan to fund a reimagined downtown area that included a new arena was brought to the voters as measures Q and R.
You know, I'm standing on a gold mine.
A full court press is underway tonight to get your vote in favor of a $5.5 billion makeover for the Sacramento rail yards.
Share the vision.
Proponents of Q&R look forward to not only a new entertainment center, but museum, theaters, new housing, and restaurants. Those backing the campaign believe the redevelopment project could bring in as much as $543 million in new revenue for the city.
Imagine what it could.
We're asking the voters to approve a sales tax in the county of 1/4 cent for 15 years. It was temporary. It was going to sunset after 15 years. And the first chunk of money that we projected it would raise was $750 million. And that was going to go towards building out the arena in the rail yard. And we thought we had plenty of money to do that. And the second half of that money, whatever was left over, plus an additional $750 million, would have been spent on projects throughout the county, to kind of jumpstart the community projects.
Separate from basketball or entertainment or anything else, the rail yards represents the largest urban infill project in the entire country. So basically what that means is Sacramento's the only city with a huge hole right in the middle of their downtown with nothing there.
So we'd had all of these failed attempts, right, in Sacramento, but there was never really, it was never real that this team was going to leave. It was kind of the threat there, but 2006, the Kings were still relevant. I mean, they were still really good, relevant on the national stage. They were still a decent franchise. They still had great fan support, obviously, and they were selling out all the games. But even at that point, I'm not sure there was that level of hysteria of, oh my God, they're gonna leave now. 2009, in the fall of 2009, the NCAA tells Sacramento, we're not coming. Arco Arena is outdated, it's not big enough.
That was like a wake-up call for me and the whole community, because if the NCAA says Arco is not up to standard, then certainly at some point the Kings and the Maloofs are gonna say, this is a reason why we need to go elsewhere.
The mayor holds a press conference. It's his regular weekly press conference at City Hall. It's in September of 2009. And it was really the first time, I think, where an elected official kind of really sounded the alarm. And he said, you know what? If we don't get our stuff together with this arena, this team's gone.
In January 2010, the NBA and local developers unveiled the Sacramento Convergence Plan, essentially a land swap of 3 development sites: the Cal Expo Fairgrounds, the Natomas Arco Arena site, and the downtown rail yards. Land sales and new development would be used to fund the plan.
The Convergence Plan gets unveiled, and it immediately has the support of the NBA and the Maloofs and You know, there was a sense that, wow, could this be the one after how many different fits and starts did we have over the years? It was a pretty complicated plan right from the beginning. And there was a sense that, however, that, you know, with some of the people involved, especially David Taylor, that this was a plan that had a shot.
It was essentially a real estate-based financing. It all relied on the ability to sell land for certain prices and to develop land into viable commercial and residential real estate out in Expo in a market that could not be worse. It hasn't been worse.
It was alive until the day the Cal Expo board said it wasn't anymore. And that was several months after the city council had decided to put its full support behind it.
I felt in the end that it just wasn't a financially viable proposal, even before the Cal Expo board decided to vote against the idea.
After the convergence plan failed, a local grassroots effort aimed at keeping the franchise in Sacramento named their campaign Here We Stay, after the Kings' marketing slogan for the season, Here We Rise.
We tried not to let it become all-consuming, but I mean, we were both passionate about it, so we'd go out to dinner and say, okay, we're not going to talk about it tonight. But that would be what we talked about anyway. I mean, it was impossible to avoid. And we would just basically come home from work, start working on it, and go to bed and start doing it the next day.
We gave it the Here We Stay name based on the Kings campaign that season, the Here We Rise campaign. So we thought it would be fitting to say, okay, the team wants to rise here, but it's also a good idea for them to stay in the area. So that's a little more important, we think.
To help give the community a voice, Here We Stay began coordinating letter-writing campaigns to the NBA, the City Council, and the County Board of Supervisors, urging them to develop a feasible plan for a new arena before it was too late. In the midst of these campaigns, the rumblings of a relocation rumor surfaced.
Rob McAllister comes out with the news, the scoop, that the Kings are down in Anaheim, and this is serious. He even had some details of what a deal that was forming would be.
Commissioner Stern substantiates the rumors. He says the Maloofs have been in talks with Anaheim. And that was just like, oh my goodness, all this work we've been doing in Sacramento on an entertainment sports complex, not realizing the clock was ticking. Now we know for sure the clock is ticking. We better get our act together.
That just launched just 3 months of amazing activity here in Sacramento. That just, you know, that went national, that the Kings, in fact, were serious about leaving Sacramento, and there's a deal in the works in Anaheim.
It was, to me, common sense. That arena was going to be obsolete. It wasn't going to be good enough for the Kings to stay there. They needed a new sports and entertainment complex. And the delay after delay after delay was going to force the inevitable. And so when David Stern came out and said that, I didn't bat an eyelash. I really didn't. I expected it. Matter of fact, I was surprised that it didn't happen sooner.
The Kings weren't doing season ticket renewals. Well, in this business, if you don't renew your tickets in January, February, and at the latest March, there's no way you're going to be on track for the next season. That meant that they thought they probably wouldn't be here in Sacramento. Then after that, we saw that Anaheim, the city of Anaheim, ended up getting a trademark for the Anaheim Royals.
Letters by lawyers started getting handed back and forth between Anaheim and Sacramento, between the Maloofs and Sacramento, and it became this real ugly fight. It started to get really like this is going to be a real ugly dogfight.
Earlier this week, the city sent a letter to Anaheim saying, leave our team alone. So today, 2 letters, this one to the Kings, this one to the NBA Commissioner David Stern, both about that $75 or $77 million the city wants to be sure they get back from the Maloofs. The letter to the Kings says, we want it in writing by a week from this Friday that you will repay the loan. The letter to David Stern says, please don't let the Kings move until they have repaid the loan.
The Anaheim City Council agenda is the Sacramento Kings topic. So it just felt like at that point we were dying a really slow death.
They were taking the team from a community that loved them so much without any real response from all the fans that are here, and it was more been a political battle the last few years, and the real people who love the team were not given a chance to help in the process to keep them here.
All the
excitement and emotion of a do-or-die game at Arco, but it was the fans fighting hard in a last-ditch effort to stop the Kings from leaving. That sold-out crowd told the mayor and the Maloofs don't take the team out of Sacramento.
Fans with signs outside early and inside early. Here we stay, basically the theme of the night at Arco Arena. And yes, they were there. The family Maloof, George, Gavin, and Joe Maloof all were there, along with the mayor. Did they hear the Kings fans?
Wooing the team's owners was carefully choreographed, even down to the chant.
My job was pretty much to rally the troops a little bit, get a group of people who wanted to help before the game, to pass out flyers, pass out signs.
This community, for whatever reason, when it's time to rally, they rally. The closer the Kings got to leaving, with that proverbial foot in the air, heading out the door, it seemed like more and more people were going to come to the games. And maybe it was, hey, I'm going to take my family to see the Kings play for the last time in Sacramento.
I'd been in Kansas City as a college coach, when the Kings left Kansas City. And it's a very different thing there. Basically the fans, what few there were, really kind of turned on the franchise. But here, very different dynamic. I think the fans started to realize the finality of it and said, boy, this is our major league sports team. This is how we compete with Chicago and Los Angeles and New York. And what else does Sacramento compete with those markets in?
The best way you can show your love for the team is go to the game. The fan has no other recourse. Fan has no other way of showing their support to keep a team here than going to the games.
We got to have our community rise up and say, we're not going to let you go without a fight. We're going to let you know how much you mean to us. We're going to let you know what this organization means to our community. We're going to let you know that this love affair that we've had for 26 years is real and deep, and it's not just some flyby organization that can leave town without our community saying, no, we don't want that to happen. I think that's what you saw. That was the groundswell of support that you saw in Sacramento.
I saw a tweet that said the Anaheim City Council votes 9-0 to approve bond measures to improve the Honda Center in preparation for the Kings. I got ticked off. I sent out a tweet. I said, Carmichael Dave approves 1-0, $200 out of his pocket to build a new arena. Who's with me? That's it. It was done. That's all. I lit a cigarette, sat in my backyard. 5 minutes later, I looked down at my phone. Twitter box is gone insane. I'm with you, Dave. Here's $50. I got $5, $10, $100. I think over the next hour, probably got about 10 grand from 500 people. I think the largest donation was $100.
At that moment, I felt compelled to get involved with this to make a final stance, because I think the time frame to get something done was closing fast, as we all know. So at that point, we have 25 stores in Greater Sacramento. I said 1,000 a store. I put 25 up there. And then I hesitated. And I thought, what's gonna happen when I hit send? I don't know what's gonna happen. Most people in marketing like to know the outcome of something they do, or they project the outcome. Most PR people like to write the story of how it should go. But I felt it was the right thing to do. I felt it was the right cause to finally get on board. And I felt business should be playing in this whole grassroots groundswell, and there really was no businesses at that time. So I hit send, and I swallowed hard.
People telling people. It's like this weird, goofy pyramid scam where one guy talks to six more, talks to six more. Next thing you know, half the flippin' city, it seems like, is on my Twitter feed donating money.
The hashtags, the at comments, this is amazing. And then it was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen?
I stayed out on the back porch for 6 straight hours, just in amazement, going through my phone, refreshing. Every time I'd refresh, there's 20, 30, 50, 100 different messages.
My whole thought at this point is we need to get this conversation to the masses. And the way to get the masses, I thought, with what we currently have, was the 6 digital boards throughout Sacramento. and woke up my graphic designer at 1 in the morning, got the creative. By 8 a.m. the next day, it was up, and it's kind of like the rest was history.
By the next morning, within 12 hours, I've got tens of thousands of dollars pledged from thousands of people. News is starting to pick it up, TV's starting to pick it up.
And the more dollars raised, that got people's attention.
I pledged $500 that night. It is ridiculous, really, you know, $500. But I really felt like I wanted to do that to show that, you know, that I was on board.
It just started trending and it caught on pretty quickly.
Kevin Phippen is a lifelong Kings fan. He was one of the hundreds who responded to radio personality Carmichael Dave's tweet last night about what you would pledge to build a new arena with or without the King.
I remember talking to Dave during that period, and it was like what he was doing, what a lot of other people were doing was critical because people needed to show how much they cared. That the fan base was the one group that really hadn't been heard from enough. We heard from the politicians and from the Kings owners. And so now it was time for people to, instead of expressing skepticism or derision, express their love for the team. And so it became a critical piece of turning the tide because it gave people a chance to get behind something as opposed to opposing something.
I made a decision fairly quickly that I would never collect a dime. It was never what this was about. Even if we raised $2, $3, $4 million, that money was worth a fraction towards an arena compared to what it was worth in political capital. This was never about cash in a bank. This was about getting on the news, the radio, the newspaper. Changing the tenor of the conversation became the soundbite that I repeated over and over and over again in every single moment I was asked to talk about this.
The grassroots campaign was what kept us in the game. It kept our pulse beating. We had a heart rate because the grassroots community spoke so loudly. And you know, being from Sacramento, you remember the history of Sacramento and the transcontinental rail yard. We've had a pioneering spirit, and it's been the everyday people who have fought to keep Sacramento relevant and whole.
Everyone became media driven. Everyone had a voice. The person's voice on Twitter with 4,000 followers was just as strong as the sports anchor on a network.
The sleeping giant has been awoken, and we will not be ignored. That's where it went, and that was ultimately the success of that movement.
There wasn't a whole lot that the fans could do to keep the team here. And I'm not downplaying the fans' involvement in any of this and their passion, because clearly it's been expressed, you know, greatly throughout this whole process. But at the end of the day, this was going to be a business decision.
I was to a point in, I would say, March and April, where I really thought in my heart that I was probably going to be moving to Anaheim.
I just looked at it pretty much like the fans. You know, hey, this is my team, and this is my town, and this isn't going to make me a happy camper at all. It's going to be crushing.
I was seeing more and more and more signs that it was all but a done deal, and I didn't have the faith that we were going to be back for more.
I thought we were gone, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. You know, everybody was talking that, you know, a lot of the front office already went down there and got houses, and you know, Malus, of course, you know, have a house down there, and you know, there's just a whole lot of stuff going on. So I really thought that we were gone.
I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've been driving to that arena for such a long time, and have seen every game played in that building. It really was difficult to comprehend that that would no longer be, and there would be a new chapter in my career and in the lives of my children. And so it was difficult.
Every building that we went into on the road, I'm thinking this may be my last time to be here. Maybe my last time as a broadcaster, it may be my last time, period. And so I'm really trying to file away memories, and I'm taking a lot of pictures, which I normally don't do. But I had my camera in my briefcase, and every venue I went into, I was taking pictures and one thing or another. I say, I want mementos, because I fully believed that the franchise was going away.
I always wondered, what would happen if the Kings had been great these last couple of years? How much better would we feel about things? But as it does in many ways, the Kings mirrored the community. The community was down, the Kings were down, everybody was down. And so that's just the way it's been.
The emotion of the night of the final game against the Lakers here was as vibrant a memory as the great successes at any time during the previous 25 3/4 seasons. It was magical.
We thought it was going to be the last home game. There it was, right in front of us, you know, and it felt like a wake.
It was kind of like a wake, kind of like a funeral, but yet the person hasn't died yet, in this case, the Kings.
Trailing by 20 points with just under 10 minutes remaining, the Kings gave their loyal fans one last fight, briefly taking the lead in the waning moments before falling to the Los Angeles Lakers in overtime.
Man, we went down swinging. We went down, you know, like a gladiator. And I cherish that. I cherish that night, that moment. Awesome.
Boy, the fans here, great. You can tell love this team. And hey, what's to say? It's been a really a neat night.
Jerry, all I can say to you is thank you.
Well, thank you.
We'll try to make it off the air. Well, I'll tell you. Let me catch my breath here. There's a lot of uncertainty, as we all know. But the one thing that we do know is the love affair between this team and this city. And tonight, we say so long.
These guys has been here for years and years, and these guys are crying like I'm crying right now. So we think it's over. You know, it was emotional. It was a night that I'm not gonna forget for sure, because I remember exactly what happened. You know, I remember every single detail.
It was a very sad evening, and maybe that process was necessary for people to go through, to feel like it was over before they really kind of changed their mindset, and before there was any level of urgency and acknowledgement that if this thing was going to work, there had to be public participation, that people just couldn't stand off to one side and have little elves somehow make this happen, that we were all going to have to, we were either in or we were out. And it was up to us to decide, are we in or are we out? And I know in my mind at that point, I was like, I'm in.
We had organized this Here We Sit movement, which was very simple. When the buzzer sounds, stick around for a half an hour after the game. Don't leave your seats. Just sit there peacefully, chant, sing, do whatever. Just don't leave.
Nobody wanted to leave. They just wanted the night to go on forever. And I'm not so sure that if they didn't get kicked out eventually, that they wouldn't have just stayed there the entire night and they would have watched the sunrise in the morning. I mean, I really believe that's what a lot of people would have done.
People are cheering and crying and chanting, and they don't want to leave. And when I finally told them they had to, you know, there was some boos, not at me, but at the situation. And it was almost like, could you leave, please? But, you know, go Kings, and we're going to fight this thing, because this fight wasn't done. Dante Green came out of the locker room, heard me on the PA, grabbed the microphone, addressed the crowd. Marcus Thornton, Tyreek Evans, Francisco Garcia. So out of the blue, these players start coming out of the locker room, getting up on the ladder and talking to the fans. And I think it was right then, that was the first time, honestly, that I didn't feel 100% certain that this team was gone. That was the first time I had an inkling of belief. Look at the power of this moment. This is stuff of Hollywood legend, and I'm witnessing it. I'm right in the middle of it. we might be able to do something here.
I saw Carmichael Dave come out smoking a cigarette, kind of lost in thought by himself, just walking out. And then I saw Jerry Reynolds walk out not long after him, and with his head down, kind of, you could tell how devastated he was that night. He kind of walked very slow to his car. And I just kind of stood there and watched both of those things happen, just kind of lost in thought myself. And it was at that moment that I kind of realized, maybe this thing isn't over, that I just got this weird feeling that maybe Kevin Johnson had left at halftime for a reason.
I refused to believe that this was going to be our last game in Sacramento. So that was kind of my mindset going to New York. I fly to New York, and I'm greeted in New York at the hotel by Sacramento Kings fans. I have no idea how the Here We Stay group had the connections and networks. It might be this darn social media, Facebook stuff. But anyway, I come to the hotel where I'm speaking at the governing board meeting, and there are Sacramento Kings fans.
Here we say, here we say.
Another part of the picture that was astonishing was this outburst of fan support. Not just fans showing that they cared, but fans showing that they can organize and create momentum. And that momentum carried right into New York City during those meetings, where there were fans, Sacramento fans, standing on the sidewalk outside that hotel tweeting.
I remember getting out of bed the morning of the governing board. I remember getting out of bed and putting on my suit. And I felt like for the first time I was dressing as a Sacramento King. Like all my years in the NBA, I put on my uniform and it was a Phoenix Suns. For the first time, I felt like I was representing the Sacramento King. I was putting on my uniform as a King.
In the late afternoon, Mayor Kevin Johnson gave his presentation to the Board of Governors after the Maloofs had made their case for relocation earlier that day.
We go on at 3:30. I remember walking in the room and I'm thinking the owners are going to be tired. It's been a long day. And you had David Stern sitting at the head of the table, and you had the owners and the relocation committee on this side, and you had the NBA staff on this side, and you had me, my chief of staff, Tim Romani from Icon, and Darius Anderson for representing Ron Burkle. So we had our 4 people in this whole room, and I'm thinking, this is game time. And I remember starting my conversation with them, essentially saying, here's what we're not going to do. I'm not gonna say anything negative about the Kings and the Maloofs because they've been very good to Sacramento. I'm not gonna comment on the Anaheim deal or criticize it because that's not our business. And I'm certainly not gonna tell you how to run your business, the NBA. But I am also not gonna sit here and let our team leave town without a fight.
Kevin Johnson had his day in court, so to speak, and impressed David Stern and the NBA owners enough for David Stern to hold a press conference the next day and say, wow, he really made a case.
The Kings and Lakers play Wednesday. I'm in New York on Thursday, fighting for our team. On Friday, Stern holds a press conference and says to the world that Sacramento made a good case to remain an NBA city, and what we're gonna do is not have them lose file on the following Monday like they were scheduled to do. We're gonna send Clay Bennett, the head of the relocation committee, and some people from the NBA out to Sacramento to see if the corporate sponsorship was real.
Some of us had a sense that the NBA doesn't necessarily mind having Kevin Johnson show more definitively and more concretely that the city of Sacramento wants to keep the Kings and that it has some financial wherewithal to do that.
Whatever he said was so powerful and was so convincing that the league couldn't turn their head. And on top of that, I don't think the league was ready yet for a third team in LA. I don't think that they were. Despite all the efforts of Anaheim, I'm not so sure that the league really wanted a third team down there.
I fly back to Sacramento. I'm greeted at the airport by who? Like 30, 40, 50, getting a hero's welcome like I've been fighting in Afghanistan for our home team. That to me just epitomizes the best of Sacramento. And that was that grassroots commitment of our community saying, we're gonna take a stand and we're gonna make our voices heard in a real way.
the tenor of the conversation continued to change. All the stories were about the Rocky story, the underdog. Could we prevail? It wasn't about them leaving, it was about the possibility of them staying. And that's a very, very important point in this whole process. The media wasn't focused anymore on whether or not the Kings were going to leave. Every story was about, will this team stay? Could they stay? Will there be a Hollywood ending? That's when the tide turned.
There were no more games we could show up at to chant. There were no more, maybe city council meetings we could go and show our support. We couldn't talk to, we couldn't reach the owners anymore or do anything like that. At that point, it was really up to the NBA, the city government in Sacramento to hopefully make something happen.
There were billboards up with purple and Here We Build and Here We Stay was also, I think, on there. And that was just really cool.
And it was at that point that the Here We stuff took off. Everybody was using the hashtags on Twitter, and it just kind of became comical at some point because everybody was, anytime they were out doing something at night, they'd be like, here we do whatever they're doing, here we wash our car, here we eat a steak, here we do whatever. But
it kind of brought, at least on Twitter, Sacramento together. I mean, just with the Here We phrase, it gave everyone a sense of community and belonging with the Kings.
There had to be a narrative for people to rally behind. And so the grassroots movement gave people that opportunity to express, instead of having it be about taxes or be about, how much were the Kings owners going to pay, be about all these unsavory things, it became about how much people love the Kings.
Big days for Sacramento. If the Kings are going to stay, the city has to make an impression on this guy. His name is Clay Bennett. He is the guy who is the head of the relocation committee. He is also the guy who owns the Oklahoma City basketball team, the team that used to be in Seattle.
So everybody wear purple. Let's get some fountains, the fountains and dye them purple. Have bars serve purple drinks. Got the media involved. There were a couple people, myself and a few others in the media, that started calling all of our media contacts and saying, hey guys, wear purple ties, wear purple jackets if you have them. Let's get a purple logo. And they were doing it.
Here we purple tomorrow. You got to do it. You got to wear some purple. If you got a business, you got to do something purple, because if you don't, your friends will not like you. You will be an outcast. I mean, look at this. This is like a 70s disco in here already. We are so purple, I keep waiting for the Bee Gees to pop up and John Travolta to come walking in or something. Here we purple tomorrow. You got to do it.
Most people joined in. And I think when Clay Bennett and the rest of the NBA lawyers showed up, I think what was very telling, and I still remember this, Bennett was wearing a purple tie. And coincidence or not, I don't think so. I think that kind of told everybody, even though we were all wearing tinfoil hats and looking for any conspiracy possible that worked out in our favor, that this thing was making the rounds back to New York.
He knew what we were doing in Sacramento was powerful. He could taste that. And I knew that when he went back to report to Stern and the rest of the relocation committee in the NBA, he was going to say that the money is real and the fan support in the grassroots community is something like I've never seen before.
It was unbelievable to see how many people, businesses, companies, all the networks get involved to put our best foot forward. And I think it proved to the NBA how vital this market is to host an NBA team.
This grassroots movement was, David Stern said, well, I think what were his words, like the most dynamic thing he had seen from fans in his time in the NBA.
You didn't see that anywhere else in the NBA. Nowhere. And this is just a very special community when it comes to sports. And clearly, it's as special as any community in the country when it comes to their basketball team.
The upshot was some quiet conversations between the NBA and the Maloofs, and the sudden decision by the Maloofs about a week later, we're going to stay one more year in Sacramento and see if this mayor can make good on his claims that they can get an arena built. He's got until March 1st next year.
This is one of the proudest moments in my life because the community believed.
And tonight, the city celebrates the Kings' decision to stay in Sacramento.
So one more season in this arena is guaranteed. But beyond that, The NBA has made it clear Sacramento has to have a detailed plan, including financing for a new arena in place in 1 year, or the Maloofs can move their team.
We hope it works. We love Sacramento. We want to stay there. You know, we've said it all along. We're going to give it another chance. We're coming back.
City leaders understandably celebrated today, but now comes the hard part, finding the money to build the arena. And the Maloofs have their doubts.
So we're waiting to see how this thing can get financed, and we'll help however we can help.
Sometimes when you're going through something in your life, you don't understand why you're going through it. And then later in your life, it makes sense to you. The fact that Kevin Johnson is a kid from Oak Park who went to Sac High, flagship high school, wearing purple and white, who grows up to care a lot about his city, be an NBA All-Star, come home, run for mayor, support some people for council, get in here, and then have the NBA team potentially ripped away. Who else in the entire world could have flown back to New York, gotten an audience with the NBA, and made a pitch that, hey, we really need that team?
You know, it was said that he wowed them in New York, and he made a great case. You might also argue that he made a good enough case to allow the NBA to back out of a situation that maybe wasn't quite ready for a move to Anaheim.
I don't think you need to read between the lines too much to see the NBA brings in its chief marketing guru and then David Stern's personal communications advisor. And those guys, those two guys come out, Brian McIntyre and Chris Granger, they come out and they start running the show. Basically, you know, they're manning the phones up there at Arco or Power Balance Pavilion. So the NBA took a really hands-on role in that. I'm not gonna say that that's any kind of indictment on how the Kings organization was running things. You know, we can't say that. I think it's more a testament to how seriously the NBA was taking this situation.
The fact that we've sold out 19 seasons in 26, and 19 of those 26 seasons, in only 10 of those 19 sellout seasons where we are a playoff team. So we don't have fair weather fans. That's why you see this outpouring support in our community. This team means everything to our community. It is about civic pride.
Sacramento is one of those cities that they go hand in hand with something, and they really go hand in hand with Kings and basketball and the NBA because they support the team no matter what. That doesn't happen everywhere. A lot of cities you look and you see and the arenas are empty and, fans come out when there's a big player that comes to town or if the team's on a little winning streak. We could be on a losing streak and the fans are still here. They're still coming out supporting. They're still hollering to the top of their lungs, ringing cowbells. Those are true fans.
We want to remain an NBA city. We want Sacramento to continue this relationship with the NBA for another 26 years.
I can tell you right now, without the fan movements and the fan voice, there is zero doubt in my mind, not an ounce, not an inkling of doubt that this team has moving vans in Anaheim right now. The process had to be completed by the politicians and the suits in general, but the fans, ultimately, they're the ones that turned the tide.
We gave the team, we gave the NBA, we gave the city a reason to fight. We were that spark that kind of started everything.
When I ran for mayor and got elected, I never thought I'd be suiting up for the Sacramento Kings, and I never thought I'd be doing everything in my power to keep a basketball team that employs people in Sacramento. But my experience in the NBA certainly gave me a direct understanding and insight of what it means to a community. It's about jobs, it's about civic pride, it's about arts, it's about culture, it's about an identity.
So now the question becomes, do we use every dollar that we can find and put it towards police officers and fire and brownouts and public safety and parks and pools and all the things that we've had to sacrifice because of the budget? Or do we use some piece of it to invest in the future?
The mayor would argue that building a new arena is going to help this city, fund police officers, fund firefighters, that it'll add to the tax base, that it'll create, 4,000 jobs is the number they're saying. So his argument would be that this should be a priority, especially in a down economy. The city laid off 42 police officers this year. Never been done. City's never laid off cops, and they laid off 42 cops. I mean, that is as bad as it gets.
I think the economy being bad in this case is a plus, because when everybody's rolling, they don't listen. We know now that we need jobs. People who are normally anti-growth or not particularly sympathetic to the private sector are now focused, and they know we need jobs. If you want to cure a whole lot of social ills, we need jobs. And not only would you get a lot of construction jobs out of a new arena, wherever you build it, you're going to get jobs in the surrounding area as well, because it's just the nature of what happens.
You want money for schools? Well, this may help it. This may bring more people here, more big companies who will then donate to youth programs, to anti-crime programs, things like that make a city safe, make it better, and overall just a great place to live.
It's the people, the fans, the people who work at the arena, the small business owners in the city who are going to really, really feel the effect of, no NBA.
What if it doesn't go the way you want it to go? And I think, of course, it'd be demoralizing, I think, for the city. This is a major city, 20th largest market. The thought of not having a major league sports franchise as well as a major league sports and entertainment facility is just hard for me to imagine.
If they were to leave, it would be like a death in the family. My kids grew up on it. It would be devastating to me personally and my family, and I think the community.
If this arena effort fails and the Kings are forced to move, it'll be the worst thing that's happened to Sacramento, maybe ever. The team leaving here will have profound impact for years and years and years to come. There will be no entertainment facility. There will be nowhere to see the circus, the ice capades. There will be nowhere to go and watch a top-line concert. You'll have to go to the Bay Area, or people don't realize what they'll be missing if this team moves.
This is a kind of a groundswell moment opportunity for us that we need to punch our ticket on, because if the team leaves here, I think it's going to be difficult for us to have another team in my lifetime, I think it's going to be difficult to rise to that level again.
It's either going to pencil out or it's not. And if people are either going to support it or they don't. And if they don't, I think we've all had a chance to throw everything that we can behind it. And so if they did leave, and I hope that they don't, but if they did leave, I think it would be a lot cleaner than if they left before, and there would have been all these recriminations, and people would have been pointing fingers. At this point, it's a financial deal. There's either going to be a private operator who's going to materialize to invest, and the city of Sacramento is going to get behind all these other funding mechanisms, or not.
You get a new building in Sacramento, it's state-of-the-art, it's something that everybody takes pride in. It creates jobs, it revives the economy. It'll revive the core area of downtown Sacramento, absolutely beyond belief in my mind, because I've seen it happen in other cities. I've seen it firsthand. I know what it can do. I know what vision and hard work can result in, and it pays off. It's a huge dividend.
I kind of like the idea of having all the jobs it creates. I kind of like the idea of seeing new things being built around a new part of downtown. I like the sound of $7 billion being distributed through taxes, income, people showing up and buying things.
In my opinion, it will have a domino effect on this entire region. I think that you're looking at a new sports and entertainment complex down in the rail yards, and I think you close your eyes, and 10 years from now, there are going to be hotels down there, there are going to be restaurants, there are going to be nightclubs. It's going to be an area, and I've seen it happen in just about every city in America. It will truly revitalize that whole area. People right now don't have a reason to go to downtown Sacramento unless they work there.
It's a huge win. It's enormous. I mean, 2 days before Sacramento's contingent went to the NBA, it was a foregone conclusion. They were gone. So to come back from the dead like that and have a small market town save its team, and the only way they saved that team is by building a world-class facility downtown, I mean, it's a huge win. I don't know of another situation of another city recently that would have pulled off something like that.
Sacramento doesn't have a lot of corporate sponsors, and so anything that really is going to get done in Sacramento is going to be up from the community. And watching these kids take their role in the community and kind of, you know, trying to make a difference, I think is very powerful. And I'm just so proud of the kids to watch them, you know, take day after day, week after week, still going forward, trying to raise money to make a difference in the community. I think it's a very powerful tool. I think it's really, hopefully, inspires other kids to go out there and do that. And we see some kids just stop by today to help out as well. And if we can kind of get that, you know, that cascading effect, and the community all takes action, I mean, next thing you know, we're actually going to build an arena and save the Kings.
Whether this is the best time or the worst time to do it, it's the time we have to do it. Now is the time to get it done.
Losing the Kings could change a lot because it wouldn't be fair. Because LA has a lot of teams and they already have any.
Yeah, they already have 2. And they don't need 3. It's crazy.
We said that we were going to get a financing plan squared away by March 1st. That was the deadline. February 27th, we're in Orlando. You got the NBA, AEG represented, the city, the Maloofs, all 3 brothers, and we finally made that a reality. And we were so excited. In fact, we came out collectively together, we dealt with the press, and we talked about this is credit to everybody who worked so hard to make this a reality. And that was on February 27th, and we were excited. We came back, we had a couple details to square up. We did that by March 1st, met that deadline, and then we as a council voted on it on March 6th, and it was a 7-2 vote. A day or two later, I'm out at Power Balance Pavilion, we're at Center Court, we all got our hands in the air, and we just think it's a victory lap. And to all of our chagrin, a couple weeks later, the Maloof family felt that it was an agreement that they could not honor and respect for a variety of reasons. And that was very, very disappointing to our community. I felt very bad for our community because emotionally we put so much into it. And there were so many people who fought long and hard to get us to that point. And I want Sacramento to know that everything we said we were going to do, we did. Every benchmark, every milestone, every parameter that was laid out, we achieved that. We did our part. So no matter what happens and how this story ends, our community should feel very proud for what it did. When I think about Sacramento, I think about the pioneering spirit. I think about a community that might get knocked down, but we get back up. And that's what I'm really proud of when I think about Sacramento. When I think about a professional sports team, I played for 12 years in Phoenix. You felt like that team was embraced by the city and the city was embraced by the team. And you had this relationship that neither one was whole without each other. And I feel that exact same way about Sacramento. This basketball team is the city's, it's our community. And when we go on and build a brand new facility, it'll be a pavilion that the people built, no different than Green Bay. And I really mean that when I think about Sacramento. We would not be here today if it wasn't for the will and the determination of everyday people in this community. I'm in New York, I'm in an airport, I'm in the streets of Manhattan, I'm in Chicago, I'm in Phoenix, I'm in LA. Everybody is talking about what we're doing in Sacramento. They're talking about how hard we fought, and they're rooting for us. This story is being told, and everybody's listening, and everybody around the country is rooting for Sacramento. And that is a proud moment that we should all embrace and really celebrate.